Good evening. Welcome to the November 4th City Council meeting. I'm Gina Louise Shara. I'm the City Council President and I will be presiding this evening. This meeting and all participating on Zoom will be audio and video recorded. We will begin with public comment, then after public comment, we'll convene the meeting. There aren't that many people who are not here for other business on the agenda. So I'm gonna, before I read my long preamble, I will ask if there is any public comment, and to indicate that, you raise your hand on Zoom under reactions. I'm not seeing any raised hands. Wait one more moment. If you're having trouble with that, you can turn on your video and wave to me because it's not a big enough meeting that I won't see you. But I'm not seeing anyone. So seeing no public comment, Laura, let me just first of all thank Northampton Open Media and let everyone know that this video will be available on their government video archive channel on YouTube, and I thank them for their work that they always do to make these meetings available to the community. All right, Laura. Sure. Seeing a public comment, roll call, please.
Councillor Dwight.
I am here.
Councillor Foster.
Here.
Councillor Jarrett.
Here.
Councillor Labarge.
Councillor Labarge, you're muted.
Here. Councillor Mayoral.
Here.
Councillor Nash.
Here.
And Councillor Quinlan, as noted, is not present. Councillor Shara.
Here.
And Councillor Thorpe.
Here.
Madam President, you have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. First up on our agenda is the tax classification public hearing. Per Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on Thursday, November 4th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m. Oh, actually, we can't start this public hearing for 2 minutes. Right. I'm not sure that has happened ever in this council term.
I can't wait to see what you do next.
Yeah, me neither. 7:03. Shall we move to the consent agenda?
Or do you want to do like 1 minute announcements?
We can do one. That's an excellent idea, Councillor Foster. We will move. First, I'll see if there are any committee chair announcements. Councillor Mayoral, then Councillor Nash.
Yes. So the next select committee on council rules will meet November 9th at 6 p.m. And public comment is encouraged.
Excellent. Thank you.
Love to hear from the public.
Councillor Nash.
Thank you, Council President. So the next community resources meeting will be on the, what was it? The 15th, yes. And Carolyn Mish will be doing we're going to have a discussion of a big picture discussion about our zoning. Carolyn will review recent zoning initiatives, provide a brief update on the resilience plan, and share details of initiatives to be introduced in the near future. And then members of the public are welcome to, ask questions about some of those things. We don't want to get into talking too much about the resilience plan because there's going to be a hearing on that a few days later. But it's an opportunity for people to show up, and over the last year, we've heard a lot of people saying, well, why didn't you think of this or do that around our zoning? And here is an opportunity for folks to do that. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other committee chair announcements? Let's go quickly to 1 minute announcement. I will, if you all don't mind, I'll start. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone who participated in the election on Tuesday, the voters, of course. And I want to congratulate the new councilors-elect and those re-elected and the others who were elected to other positions. I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you. And, you know, I especially want to thank and acknowledge everybody who ran. This was a very spirited and active election cycle, which is wonderful for our community and wonderful for democracy. So it was really great to see that level of participation. And, you know, I know how hard it is to put yourself out in this way, and I have nothing but the deepest admiration and respect for anyone willing to make that kind of commitment to our community. So I just want to thank everyone for stepping up who did, and everyone for participating. Councillor Labarge and Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Council President. I would like to thank our City Clerk Pam Powers and her staff, Assistant City Clerk Amy Solinsky, Jennifer Larkin, and Terry Yuska, and all the staff who helped at the schools and polling sites during the early voting for the primary and that election day, and early voting again and election day on November 2nd. I want to congratulate our Council President, Gina Louise Scherer, for being elected our new 45th mayor of our great city of Northampton. Well deserved, Gina Louise Scherer. We'll see you on January 3rd for swearing you in and all elected officials. I want to thank all my residents in Ward 6, 1,060, who voted for me to represent them as a city councilor. And I will do my job, and I will be there for them. I will answer my phones. I will talk to whoever in the city. I want to say thank you to all the candidates who ran for positions in our city, and congratulations to the candidates who have won their elections. Now that our elections are over and the people have voted in our city of their choice of candidates, it is time for all of us to come together to preserve equity and our progressive values. We need to build safety and respect and dignity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Labarge, for that. Had I seen another hand? Yes, Councilor Foster.
First, I will echo the congratulations and the gratitude to those who ran. And I want to also let the community know that the Northampton Kiwanis Club will be installing their first little free library at the Jackson Street School on Saturday at 1:30. There's a power auger and tools. I'll be there to help out, and also want to make sure the community knows that coming soon to a wonderful elementary school near you will be a little free library.
Lovely, thank you. Councilor Dwight, then Councilor Maori.
So I'll echo all the gratitudes and gracious thoughts that have been shared relative to the candidates, the citizens, and everyone who participated in the election. But I'd also like to note, it's worth noting, by 91%, which is in my book's acclamation, the city of Northampton voted to support and allow for the continued research of establishing a municipal light plant in the city. That was breathtaking. I have never seen such unanimity reflected in any vote in my time here, and I think it's unprecedented. So I would say that maybe a very gentle message has been sent to Comcast in some way, and that hopefully it was received. But again, thanks to everyone who actually took the time to understand a rather complicated question and then speak so clearly and unequivocally. So we go forward.
Thank you, Councilor Maori.
Yes, well, I do have to thank our fair city, because people got out on a municipal only election. And I think the early voting and mail-in voting is really exciting and is bringing a lot more voters into the circle, consistently into the circle. So that's very exciting. Thank you to everyone. And just quickly, we were talking about the Elks Club. I just want, especially any Ward 7ers out there, to know there's a convenient location for COVID. The health department has set up COVID and I believe 19 and I believe flu vaccine shots at the Elks Club right on Spring Street. I have an appointment for my booster. I've got my 2 under 12 kids. Their appointments for next Thursday, so take advantage of the Elks Club. There's it's going to be going on, and you can access it from the city website.
Excellent. Any other announcements? Okay, seeing none, and we are now at 7:10, a perfectly respectable time to start a tax classification hearing. We will go back to that.
I will move to open the public hearing, please.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Dwight, seconded by Counselor Labarge. Any discussion on opening the hearing? Roll call, please, Laura, on opening the hearing.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes,
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing's opened. I'm gonna read the note. So per Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, Northampton City Council will hold a public hearing on today, Thursday, November 4th, 2021 at 7:05 p.m. by remote participation, discuss the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class of real and personal property within the city of Northampton for FY 2022. City Council will hear all persons who wish to be heard thereon. And I know that joining us as proponents, we have the Principal Assessor, Mark Datro, and we also have Finance Director Nardi who are here. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. And am I right that you have a presentation that you want to give?
Me?
Well,
Sorry, it's the same presentation we do, and I believe I'm legally obliged to give a presentation, or at least speak to y'all, the council. Has everyone here, have all 9 council members now seen at least one of these so far?
yes.
any.
Okay, all right. Okay, I'm sure it's
But
thrilling.
it's scintillating every time,
Every
and
time, yeah. So,
bring it.
okay, it really hasn't changed much.
Would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, I'm having some computer issues and some I'm hoping that I don't lose connection because I've already had my screen go freeze a couple times.
It might be, okay, yeah. Feel free also to turn, if you're having trouble turning your camera off, sometimes will help.
Okay. All right. So you already stated the law, why we're here. And let's see. Hold on. Sorry, there we go. All right. So as you already stated, Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56. We're here to decide, or the city council and the mayor must decide the percentages of the local tax levy to be borne by each class property, or to simplify it, are we gonna have a single tax rate or a split tax rate? Obviously my office, the assessor's office, will do what you tell us to do essentially. But I am a strong proponent of a single tax rate myself. Now, by the Property Classification Act of 1978, we have to split all the property between residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. Residential are all homes, condos, apartments, their accessory buildings, anything that humans habitate. Commercial are the property held for the purposes of businesses, such as stores, office buildings, hotels, vacant land that's used under chapter land, forest land, recreational land. Industrial property is manufacturing. Personal property are businesses. Now, some of the most important factors in deciding whether to go with a split rate or a single tax rate is knowing the distribution between the property classes. Northampton has had traditionally an 80-20 split, and we still we're now under 20% for the commercial, industrial, and personal property. Most cities, nearly every city that has a split rate has a minimum 70-30 split, and a lot of that 30% split is heavily industrialized. if you look here, since 2018, our rate of commercial property percentage has gone down. There's a fairly large decrease between 21 and 22, partially because of closures of commercial businesses due to COVID-19, but also partially since the city council passed the personal property law that anything under $2,500 will not be taxed anymore. So it's not as bad as it looks, but there still is some, there's still hurt because of COVID on the business side of things. So here's just the same distribution, but in a monetary viewpoint. Now you see the total tax levy for FY22 within that, how it's broken apart by class. Vast lion's share being real estate, residential real estate. Okay, could you go to the next? All right. Now here's property values over the last few years. We've had a pretty large increase in property values from we've had a steady increase, but we had a large increase last year to this year, mainly in the residential section. The values of homes skyrocketed in large part due to a lack of homes for sale and a high demand. Everyone knows that. And we also have a lot of folks moving to Northampton from larger cities with more disposable income, and that does drive the market higher. Commercial property was fairly stagnant. Actually, it went down a little bit. The hospitality industry definitely got hurt real bad by COVID-19. But things like big box stores, grocery stores, construction businesses, and the industrial section was not hurt at all by COVID. All right, next one, please. So part of all this is our new growth drive. It's what increases the taxable properties within the city. We had a lot of new growth last year. Construction was not hurt by COVID-19. We also had a citywide, what's called a cyclical inspection. Once every 10 years, every single property gets re-inspected. And there's a lot of small additions, things like that, porches. These are all part of growth that somehow fell through the cracks over the last few years. Charlene, could you the next slide? As the growth by value, it was about 63, 319, 160. It was just a little over 61 million last year. So we had 1,099,854 in taxable new growth. A lot of that was, like I said, was due to the cyclical inspection. We also have the Sincarfa solar pilot. We have large developments in Emerson Way and Village Hill, which have been going on for the last few years. We had a huge brand new storage facility built off East Hampton Road that added over $5 million.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the pot shops, they did a lot of good work to old buildings that would have just gone to the wayside. They look very nice. And all right, here's the levy. One thing I do want to point out, the override that was voted on in 2020 is going to be factored into the tax rate this year. We chose not to do it last year, or was chosen not to do last year. give folks a little bit of a break, but it is going to be part of the tax rate this year. And as I stated before, I am a proponent of the single tax rate. The mayor is a proponent of the single tax rate. That's the factor of one. That's the proper term for it. The factor of less than one would shift the burden of the tax levy to the commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayers, and lower the tax rate for residential homeowners. If we had a factor of more than one, that would do the opposite. It would raise the tax rate of homeowners and lower the tax rate of the commercial side of things. And here's some of our neighbors. Now, the 22 tax rates are not up on the Mass DOR site. So this is just a comparison of last year's tax rates. The cities in orange are the towns and cities that have split tax rates. Those in blue are single rate cities. If we have a factor of one, we'll end up having a $17.89 per thousand tax rate, up from $17.37, or a raise of 52 cents, or about 3%. Like I was saying before, most cities with a split rate have a heavy industrial base, and as you saw from the previous one, and we've talked about it in previous years, Holyoke, Westfield, Agawam, West Springfield, all cities with heavy industrialized bases are the split rate cities. And I do want to point out that a lot of their economies are not as stable as Northampton or Longmeadow or Amherst. And all right, so if we did decide to split the rate, we went with the minimum residential factor, as low as it would go. The lowest we could lower the residential tax rate would be $15.80 per thousand. This would in turn raise the commercial rate to $26.84 per thousand. This would lower the average residential bill to lower it by $736 on average. In turn, it would raise the average commercial bill $5,428 and raise the average industrial bill $6,809. So a total of there's 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts. 240 of them have a split rate. It's about 2/3. 104 with rates that favor the residential, 7 towns with rates that favor the commercial. And as I stated earlier, we have an 80-20 split on minimum. Usually it's a 70-30 split. So the city of Northampton is just not designed to support a split tax rate. And if we ever decided to split the rate just to see how it would possibly go, it's extremely difficult to revert things back to the way they used to be, because obviously folks don't like getting their residential taxes raised. The next one, please. Now, there are certain mayoral options, such as the residential exemption and the small commercial exemption, that are possible if the mayor decided to offer these up. there's possible ways to give folks some type of a break. The only issue with these, both of these options are, they offer small pros to a larger number of cons. Residential exemption would lower the value, lower the taxes for about a third, a little less than a third of taxpayers, while raising the tax rates on about 2/3 of the taxpayers. So it does hurt middle class taxpayers as well. It again, it shifts the tax rate for the residential side higher. It would also increase the overlay reserve to allow for people to appeal their status. Non-homeowners don't see any benefit, and folks that are living in rental units that tend to be higher, assessed at higher values, could see their their rents go up. And the small commercial exemption, it reduces the taxes paid by owners of properties occupied by small businesses, but the adoption of this exemption increases the commercial and industrial tax rates, has no benefit for businesses that don't own the property, and very few small business owners actually own the location or the building that they're located at. It benefits landlords far more than actual business owners. And again, you'd have to increase the overlay reserve. So again, summary, myself and the mayor recommend the residential factor for a single tax rate of $17.89 per thousand. And that's all I have on this. Are there any questions?
Thank you so much.
I hope everybody's awake.
We love a PowerPoint over here. Counselor Labarge.
Thank you. Mark, I have a question.
Mhm.
When we're looking at a split rate versus keeping a single rate like we have, my question is, would this be a right time to do a split rate? Here we have had so many businesses go under and still trying to get back on their feet. Homeowners who have lost their jobs, looking for the type of jobs that they have that have become difficult. So I have concerns of even looking at that split rate. I find it to be not the right time to do this because of the economy and what has happened to our city of Northampton.
In the best of economies, I wouldn't recommend splitting the tax rate in the city of Northampton, let alone right now.
Thank you, Mark.
Counselor Mayoral.
Hi, yeah, thank you, Mark. I was curious about the closing of the Coca-Cola plant, and I'm not sure how big an impact, if that's kind of a significant impact, and whether that would be registered now or in the next fiscal year. I don't know where their process is in the closing.
If everything goes as they say it will, if they close in fiscal 23, we won't see this. We won't likely see this reflected on our records to fiscal year 2024.
Okay, thank you. And do you think it will be significant? I
They
mean,
are the biggest industrial taxpayer.
yeah.
It's, a loss of what, 230 something jobs. It's significant. That being said, they still have to pay taxes on it, until they sell the property.
Right.
Hopefully someone buys it soon. I hate the thought of a building that large being vacant. So it will affect things, but seeing that Northampton is traditionally not an industrial city, it'll have less of an effect then it'll have less of an effect than. I'm trying to think of it's horrible to me that it's closing. So I'm trying to. But it's not going to affect Northampton the same way as it might South Hadley or a city that doesn't have as much commercial. I'm sorry, not commercial base, but is much of a population with higher priced homes. Plus, Smith College is such a stabilizing force, and Smith College, for all the tax breaks they may get, they still are by far the highest taxpayer in the city.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Foster, then Councillor Jarrett, then Councillor Nash.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. It's similar to Councillor Mary's question. I was thinking about, and I was looking about the development at Village Hill, which has been for years now a really reliable source of new growth, and Village Hill is nearly fully developed now. And I was just curious if there are things that you can speak to that you know on the horizon of larger projects that may be coming to fill that void, or what impact there may be over the next several years.
Village Hill is, there's still the 53 unit affordable housing apartments that are only, at least for when I ended my new growths as of July 1, it was only about an eighth built. So there's still a good deal of new growth from Village Hill to come, and there's still a lot from Emerson Way, but I'm not aware of larger projects on the horizon. That's something I can speak with the building department or the planning department about. If you ever wanted to call my office, I'm happy to speak with you, and then I can get a hold of Wayne and John from those departments. But I hope there's some new growth, some new projects. Oh, well, the condos on Holly Street where the Catholic Church is. There's a lot of that. Those are going to be. That's the biggest project I know of going on that I have very little value on at this time.
Thank you.
And just to note that 53 unit development at Village Hill, I understand it's, as you're doing your new growth, but just so people know, that's getting closer and closer to occupancy. It's looking fantastic if anybody takes a ride up there. So.
Oh, it looks great. Yeah, it looks great.
Councillor Jarrett, I think you were next.
Thank you. What is the overlay reserve?
The overlay reserve. Oh, sorry, I don't talk about it that much. And correct me if I'm wrong, Charlene. So part of that is to fund abatements when folks have an issue with their value. Let's say there's very few houses, but let's say I value somebody's house at $1 million, something like that, and they get taxed as $1 million, and we find out that it should be 800,000. So that money will, the money we pay them back with partially comes out of the overlay. If I'm not 100% sure what else it gets used for, if it gets used for anything else.
I should note that we also have a member of the Board of Assessors, David Murphy, here. So feel free, you're recognized to jump in if you have anything to add to some of these questions. Councillor Jarrett, you still have the floor? Go ahead.
Great, thank you. So if we adopt the single tax rate, I see that that there will be a 3% increase in the tax rate. But that doesn't reflect the change in valuation. Do you have numbers on what a percentage increase the average residential tax bill will be going up by, given that we're also seeing
by about 5 to 6% total, I believe. I mean, that's the average single family home went up. Let me see if I can do something real quick. Yeah, the average single family home went up by about 6%. So, yeah, that's something I'm gonna have to figure out. Do you want to give me a call or something like that? Or you can
Sure,
give me a
yeah,
moment.
or an
You can give me a
email, yeah.
moment. I'm not used to doing the numbers on the
It's
fly.
okay, yeah, but no, just that rough idea. It certainly sounds like compared to previous years, people will be seeing a higher tax bill.
Yes. I mean, the market value went up pretty astronomical. Well, it went up significantly. The tax rate went up partially. I mean, the tax rate went up less than we expected it to because of how high the values went. We expected the tax rate to go up $1.11 if things would have gone up, but because the values went up so high, that drove down how high the tax rate was going to go up. The tax rate went up partially because of the override that was voted on in 2020.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor Nash, I think you were next.
Thank you, Council President. Have myself muted there. And Mark, I always appreciate this presentation. It's such a critical decision that we make here as to how we're going to tax ourselves every year. And I think it's great that we formally do this in this manner. Can you explain how, we can increase taxes by 2.5%, but the overall, the rate for the per thousand is going up to increasing at 3%. And I imagine that has to do with the override is built in there, but could you just explain that for folks who might be tuning in to say, what?
Yeah, so I mean, so you take last year's levy, multiply that by the Prop 2.5, the 0.025, then you add that, and then you also take in the new growth. So it's 2.5% plus the new growth. And yes, the override as well, and plus adjusted new growth from the previous fiscal year. That's new growth that wasn't noticed for some reason, and then added on to the next fiscal year. Something like there was a house off of West Farms Road that had previously been tax exempt, and it wasn't noticed that it shouldn't be tax exempt till after the bills went out. So we had to add it on to the tax rolls.
Thank you. That's very helpful. I have one other question. During the PowerPoint, there was a bullet that it was a con, that if we did a particular thing, that it would shift the burden to higher priced homes. And the thought I had in my head is, well, why would that be a bad thing? So, but anyway, what was the situation? Can you explain, what were the circumstances where we would be shifting that burden?
Well, you're shifting your burden to, I mean, you're not just shifting your burden to, how do I put this? I'm trying to think of a good way. You're not shifting your burden just among, 5 or 6 filthy rich people. You're shifting your burden to over 2/3 of the folks in the city. There's a lot of middle class, lower middle class folks that are going to bear that burden as well. So a lot of folks that really are having a hard struggling anyway, but that still won't benefit from that, which is why the exemptions that I mentioned, I mentioned them because I'm supposed to mention them, but I don't think that they're very good unless it's an extreme emergency situation.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see you, Councilor Dwight. Let me just ask, David Murphy, I saw your hand before, then you took it down.
Yeah, because you sort of changed subject and went a little bit different direction. But what I wanted to highlight, the actual growth in the levy, $2.5 million was the override that we voted for a couple of years ago. But as Mark mentioned, the basic 2.5 increase was $1.5 million, and the new growth alone, because of the fact that things got relisted, was another $1 million. So it was actually $1.6 million increase between the 2.5 jump and the new growth jump, which was greater than the override itself. But when you add it up, you're talking another $5 million on the levy, which is a substantial increase in a single year. So the increase in value of the city, the fact that we're getting close to being a $4 billion city, $4 billion of property to tax, is actually what tempered the tax rate, because the tax rate is a relationship between the $4 billion we got to tax and the 70 million we're trying to raise. So even though the levy went up $5 million, the increase in property value is what kept the tax rate down, because it's getting distributed over more valuable property. I think that's the thing I wanted to point out, is the tax rate is really a ratio between how much money you want to raise and what you're spreading it across in taxable property. And both went up. So it sort of tempered the tax rate a little bit, which is, which is kind of nice. And many of the other sort of tricks you can play with how to distribute the tax burden, many of those things were designed for other parts of the state. The residential exemption is much for the Cape. Say they tag the investment bankers with $6 million vacation homes and give a break to the cops, the firefighters, and the teachers who live there year round. Makes a lot of sense for them. But last I knew, about half of our Northampton residents live in rental property. A residential exemption actually raises the taxes on the buildings they're in, and it forces their landlords to increase their rent. So you're giving a break to people, people of moderate means with regular homes that they own, but that is kind of getting paid for by the people in rental housing that haven't gotten to buy a house yet. It's a gimmick that works in some communities, but not in others. And we're one of the ones that really doesn't work in. And I think that's kind of what I wanted to point out.
Thank you for that. Councilor Dwight.
Former Councilor Murphy stole my thunder, actually, and said it better than I would have anyway. But that's absolutely true. That exemption, that mayoral option exemption, is applied on the Cape and in some communities in the Berkshires for very expensive second homes, and those not coincidentally, are the two regions that are losing the largest amount of population, because people can't afford to live there because they're being priced out by the desirability of their places as a second home community. The other issue is, of course, the pressures that it puts on rentals here in this community, and that's a huge concern directly to us, because there is a shortage of rental availability, and particularly affordable rental availability. We're having the challenges, of course, of things like Airbnb, people doing that with their properties, which is why we previously chose to actually pursue those properties as in a special class that is now allowable. We're now allowed to tax them, because that's exhausting. That's also putting pressures on rental availability. Plus, the appeal that Mark referred to of this community for the COVID flight from urban centers is that you're seeing two-family homes and others being bought up by people as residential to be reconvert to residential properties, which is good on one hand but bad on the other, because it eliminates more rental options. So, and if I may, I'm just going to default to my regular discussion that I do every year about when we debate and discuss this factor one. And one of the most telling graphs that Mark presented us with was, if you look at the compare and contrast the communities in orange versus the communities in blue, the communities in orange having a split rate, and the communities in blue, of which we are part of, don't have a split tax rate. Those were once upon a time industrial giants. They were commercial. Holyoke in and of itself was actually built around the industries. It was the planned industrial city. And when it was booming, of course, it was great to have those industries subsidize the community in which they basically were. They enjoyed the pleasure of being the heartbeat of that city. When they decided to rip the heart out of those cities, you were stuck with, Holyoke has the highest commercial tax rate in the state, and consequently has one of the largest problems of trying to promote commercial development so that it can one, take its schools out of receivership, among other things. We're not an industrial town. We started off as a farm, the farm center, the county seat. This is a college town. As Mark has said, we rely heavily on our retail economy, and our Coca-Cola bottling plant being our largest industry is actually somewhat telling. So it does not make sense. This is not an outfit that would fit us in any way, shape, or form, and in fact would actually impede us and cause us harm. And the most cogent thing that Mark referred to was the fact is, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, you can't get it back in, because there's no one who has the political courage to say to their residents, yeah, well, we don't have any industries left, so maybe if the commercial residents would be, if the homeowners would consider sharing more of the tax burden, please vote for me. Well, those people don't get elected, and I haven't heard anyone say that yet. So it's just not popular. So I'm always signed off on this because it is the right thing to do. And to be honest, when I first came on the council, I kept saying, yeah, well, let's stick it to the man. And it turned out we were the man, and that didn't make any sense. So that would be my counsel.
Okay, I want to answer Mr. Jarrett's question earlier, the approximate percentage that the property bills would go up. Is that what your question was?
Yeah.
About 9%.
And do you have a sense of what that was in the previous couple of years?
No, I would have to go through each year and do the math.
Yeah.
I did the math while everyone started. So it's about 9% from if it's 1789 compared with the values now in the 1737 with last year's values, so about 9% total bills are going up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Murphy?
Yeah, just back to the impact of splitting the rate. When you do that, you increase the tax burden on the commercial, industrial, personal side. So what you're doing is increasing the operating expenses of those properties. When you do that, their value goes down. So that's the insidious part of it, is when you first do it, you get away with it for a year or two, but then the impact of the increased taxes actually drops the value of the buildings you're taxing. And so the return starts to decline. So over time, you end up lowering the taxable value of the buildings that you burdened with higher taxes, because their net operating incomes go down. So your return on doing that slowly fades away, because those properties become less valuable. And because of the tax burden, people don't develop new ones. So, if you look at it, it's the beginning of the end for major contribution of that portion of your tax base. And when it's as small as it is here, it's a good year for us is 20%. It's down to 18 something. If you do this, it would continue to shrink because of the increase in expenses. And you saw Mark mentioned, it's a $700 decrease perhaps for the average residential tax bill, but it's a substantial increase on the commercial side, because you're giving a break to over 80% of your taxpayers and taking that and giving it to 18%. So it's a substantial increase. Their values start to go down. You get a decreasing return from having done it in the first place. And Councilor Dwight is right. Once you've done that, there is never the political will to go in the other direction. So it's more or less not reversible when you do it, and the return sinks over time. And eventually you're kind of right back where you started, only you've destroyed your commercial tax base in the process. That's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you. Charlene, did you have something?
Yeah, so I just want to clarify too. So that 8.6% is not everybody's tax rate is going up 8.6%. It's an average, and some will go up that, some will go up less, and most will go up less as well. So I just wanted to make that clear to everybody.
I was just at the average bill, the average real estate
Right.
bill.
Right.
Thank you. So Councillor Quinlan's not able to join us tonight because he's home ill with COVID. But he wanted me to ask a question that he's sort of asked a couple times, or to make a point, which is that, we set this tax rate at starting in the third quarter of our fiscal year. So the bills for the first half don't reflect this change. And so we're now implementing the override halfway through the fiscal year. So is that increase is going to be reflected or sort of concentrated in these next 2 quarters? Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So that's something for people to be aware of. Mr. Murphy, did you have another point? Is your hand just still up? I can't remember. Oh, sorry, hold on. You can unmute.
Yeah, my hand, I left it up, but I do have another comment. And that's the confusing thing about the court, they're called quarterly tax bills, but none of them actually reflect a quarter of what you're paying, because the first 2 are estimated, because it isn't until the third one that we actually marry the tax rate to your value for that year. And then the second 2 are to make up what's left over from what you didn't pay in a preliminary bill. So it can be very confusing. And I think what people should know, any people out there, when they get their bill in December, that's the due January 1, don't have a heart attack. Because if you try to think of that as a quarterly bill, and then you add CPA on top of it, it makes it even more confusing. But it's the way the state mandates it being done. It isn't an optimum thing, because none of them reflect actually a quarter of what you're paying in any given year, which is really hard to explain to people, because consumers say, why would you do that? And it's like, got to ask the Commonwealth why we do that, because it's kind of the way they set it up to be done. But I think the real point I wanted to make is, if you want to file for an abatement, you need to do it within 30 days of when the post date is on your actual bill. So if you look at your value and say, I got a problem with this, you need to take action right away once you get this bill you're going to get in December, because that's the one that's the actual bill. It's the first time the tax rate for FY22 is married with your real value for FY22. And then that's the one that triggers your request for an abatement. So you need to not, and you have the statute says you got 30 days to apply. And if you don't do it within 30 days, the assessors can't even hear your appeal, hear your request for an appeal, because you missed the deadline. And that's a very hard deadline. So please be aware of that. If you have any questions, call the assessor's office and say, hey, what are my options here? But you got to do it within 30 days of the post date of the actual bill, which you'll get sometime in December.
Thank you so much for making that point. Councillor Foster.
This is really helpful to know and to think about communication. I remember, I think it was last year or the year before, when assessments like this went out, I think it was in East Hampton, a lot of people were caught off guard, and there was a big kind of public, I remember being in the Gazette, and, kind of a lot of public surprise and upset. And I as a counselor can certainly communicate with some of my constituents about this, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of communication that can happen ahead of time, so that people are expecting the change, or know that, especially because I'm thinking about how the override will be implemented, and that is something people will notice. So
Well,
I
that-
just would encourage, yeah.
East Hampton's override was significantly larger than ours, and their tax rate went up significantly more than 52 cents. It is very hard to. I don't know what we would do in terms of letting folks know, because the values change every year, and short of mailing every single taxpayer a notice, I mean, but, we could always put something in the newspaper, of course, but most of the time when we put something in the newspaper, we get a lot of complaints that all we did was put it in the newspaper, and we get so many phone calls that say nobody reads the newspaper anymore. It's just traditionally, the actual bill, the January bill, is your notice that you have the valuation going up, and you have the month, you have till this year, till February 3rd to get your abatement application in. If it just costs a lot of money to send out mailers and things of that nature.
Is it possible for a notice to go out, or, something like that when the bills go out, or are those two very separate processes?
Well, I mean, the bill would have, if it goes out with the bill, you're getting no notice because the bill went up. But that's, we could certainly put something on our website. If there's any suggestions, I'm all ears for sure.
I think Mayor Narcoitz has one.
Yeah.
It's not really a suggestion. It's that we can certainly look at ways to work on that. I don't know whether that would be a robocall. I don't know whether that would be an op-ed in the newspaper. Potentially this discussion tonight might get covered. I suspect it will, and that could certainly be a way to communicate it. This has been an issue even in years when there's not an override. It's a very confusing setup, the way the state makes us do this, because you pass the FY22 budget on July 1st, and you send people a bunch of bills for FY22, but they're actually just getting bills based on their 21 rate, and then the January bill is always the catch-up bill because of the tax rate setting process happening at the end of the calendar year. And so like so much of this, it's a bizarre setup. So I guess the main message I would want people to know is that this isn't the city like playing a trick on people, and it's not by choice that we're doing this. If there was a way we could spread it out, we would. It's impossible to do it. So we can certainly look into ways of communicating this to people, just to sort of let them know. So I'll certainly work on that.
Thank you, Mayor.
You want to be the one to record the robocall? I'd be happy to. I'm just kidding.
I'll get my best robocall voice on.
We'll use the robot voice for that one. Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Other questions. So I want to note, this is a public hearing. So I want to invite the public, if anyone has questions or comments, to please raise your hand and share your thoughts. And there is Gwen. Hold on, Gwen, okay. Gwen, you should be able to unmute, and if you could please state your name and your city or town.
Sure. My name is Gwenevra Lodi-Nabad, and I live in Northampton, Massachusetts. And my question is, when it comes to properties such as Habitat for Humanity properties, or properties that have been built in that way for low income or whatever, is this going to impact them in the same way and increase their values too?
It will not. As long as they have a rider in the deed that it's still affordable housing, we assess the home at the sale price, and which is usually significantly lower than true market value, and we can only raise the assessed value by very low percentages.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that question, Glenn. Anyone else from the public who'd like to speak to this hearing? Okay, while we're waiting to see if anyone jumps in, counselors, any other questions or comments? Let me just do a little scroll. Okay, I don't see any other discussion. Counselor Dwight, this is your cue.
So what are you guys going to do if I'm not here? All right, I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second that.
Second.
He was testing you all. Look at that. A motion's been made and seconded to close the hearing. Any discussion on closing it? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
and Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, the hearing's been closed. Thank you everyone for participating and our guests who joined us on it. So this will, the order for this will appear on the finance agenda soon, and then we'll take it up later on the council agenda. So moving next to the consent agenda, I will read the items and then ask for removals. 2 items, minutes of October 21st, 2021. And B 21.341, appointment to the Arts Council. This received a positive recommendation from City Services. This is for Mai Belitsky, 20 LaSalle Avenue in Northampton, term October 2021, June 2024. This is to fill a vacancy. Those are the 2 items on the consent agenda. Councilor Dwight.
I'd like to remove 21.341, please,
Okay.
for purposes of discussion.
Okay, that item's been moved, and then can we get a motion on?
And then I move the minutes actually in this case, but I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Laura, roll call, please.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Foster.
Yes.
Council President Shara, that was seconded by someone else.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Who seconded that? Thank you.
It might have been me, but Counselor Thorpe can have it.
Well, he said it was not him. He
Just want to make sure you know. Yes.
be very honest.
Oh,
I guess we'll give that, if that's okay, Laura, to Councilor Nash. Thank you, Councilor Thorpe.
I would like to move the approval of my Belitsky, please.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Foster. And discussion, Councilor Dwight.
My discussion point is less about the candidate. In fact, actually, it's not about the candidate. I'm assuming that we'll hear from the folks who've spoken with her that they recommend that this candidacy move forward. It's a concern that derives from the recent decision by the Arts Council to cancel the biennial exhibit. Now, I won't dispute that, but the concern is that it seemed to have been done without a rather clear understanding of the rules of open meeting law, and that worries me. I just want and I want to emphasize when I'm stressing is that, and maybe this is an appeal to the mayor, that all candidates, as they move into their appointed committees, that they have at least a comprehensive knowledge about the purpose and intent of open meeting law, which is to establish transparency, to provide for the public an opportunity to know what action items that will be voted on they will know ahead of time so that if they have an opinion that they can at least witness the deliberation, if not also discuss in public comment. And that was not the case in this instance. And that's antithetical to the very intent of open meeting law. I'm not condemning anyone. I've seen this happen on a number of committees. And also issues of deliberation outside of the meetings, which is also problematic, which we have to be very, very careful of. This body works very hard to try to abide by those terms, but the fact is that we actually immerse ourselves more into this. This is more about our everyday lives, so we probably have a better understanding. It's just that we're asking a lot of volunteers, but with that ask, of course, also still comes the state mandated laws, which I believe in. I believe that they have value, and I believe that they are critical in order to conduct our governance with transparency. And so I would ask that Kenneth Belitsky be able to know going forward what those rules are before they're inducted into this meeting, because their next meeting, because it would be unfair of us to have that expectation of them without providing them with the understanding and knowledge that's available to all of us. So that's it. That's my concern, and I will be approving this appointment, but with that caveat. You're muted. There you go.
There.
Who? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Mayor Narkowitz, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, go ahead.
You were muted. Your screen was visually muted before. I'm not sure why.
Uh-oh. All right. Well, if I blink off, it's on you, Councilor Nash. Go ahead, Mayor Narkowitz.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Councilor Dwight on that, and I appreciate the concern that he raised, and I appreciate, and certainly we do provide, the city clerk provides every new board member with information on the open meeting law and the ethics law, et cetera. And I did hear the concerns raised by Attorney Newman about the open meeting law relative to that particular meeting. There's actually been some discussion with him, and this is an issue that's come up even more recently than that in the school committee. And so there is a little bit of a misunderstanding or a misinterpretation of the open meeting law with regard to whether or not one needs to list whether there will be a vote on an issue on an agenda. In fact, the state law and the interpretation by the Attorney General says that you need to have a list of all of the items that will be discussed or anticipated to be discussed by the board. And all of their rulings say that discussion, so people know there's going to be a discussion about the biennial. And so whether a board decides to take a vote about something or related to the discussion point, that in and of itself is actually not a violation of the open meeting law. But certainly we do want all of our board members to be well-versed and to receive training on them, and we certainly do. But this recently came up with a school committee discussion and vote that was not listed on the agenda as a vote, but there was clearly a discussion that was listed on the agenda. So members of the public knew that this would be a topic of deliberation. So the open meeting law doesn't require you to list the actions that the board takes in advance of the meeting. It asks you to list all of the items that will be discussed by a board. And so just making that clarification, which I think even Attorney Newman has since acknowledged, having reviewed it himself. So that's my only, I just want to, and he did not actually file a complaint upon reviewing that there was a violation of the open meeting law. So just wanted to put that information out there.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this appointment? Seeing none. Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, that that appointment's been approved. Moving on to, we are gonna now recess for finance. Oh, sorry, Counselor Jarrett.
Oh, I just wonder, did the mayor get an opportunity to give any communications or proclamations? We may have skipped that.
I think I did skip that. Usually he tells me ahead of time if he has any. Mayor Narkowitz, do you have any communications for us?
Thank you, Counselor Jarrett, but I do not have any communications, but thank you for noting that that wasn't an agenda item, but no, I did not have any.
Thank you, both of you. Okay, let's recess for finance, please. And Laura, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Labarge,
Here.
Counselor Quinlan. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not present. Counselor Shara
Here.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Here.
Okay. Our first item is approval of minutes from our previous meeting, which was October 21st, 2021.
Vote to approve.
Second.
Which is made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Any discussion on those minutes? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, those pass. And next we're on to financial orders, 21.350, in order to establish a tax classification for FY 2022. So I am gonna read the very brief order and then we'll put it on the floor. So this is in City Council, November 4th, 2021, upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narkowitz, in order to establish a tax classification for FY 2022, ordered that the Northampton City Council approves a residential factor of 1 for fiscal year 2022. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by Counselor Thorpe and seconded by Counselor Barge for a recommendation and discussion. This is what we just had our hearing on. Is there any discussion? Counselor Jarrett.
Thank you. I'm always a little confused actually about whether we deliberate during a public hearing or whether we deliberate during this time. But maybe it doesn't, maybe either way. But just wanted to share my thoughts that, you know, I'm continually frustrated by the limited options that are given to us by the state. I understand the reasoning behind not splitting the rate, and I see how that would have unintended consequence. So I will support this order. And I think what we need is an exemption option that would be income-based and assist both homeowners and renters. And I would love to think about a home rule or state action for this.
Thank you. Counselor Dwight.
I, for one, would love to see the state move away from a regressive taxation system of property tax and move towards a more equitable, fair division of taxes based on your ability to pay. And we have historically transitioned from that type of progressive tax system to this very regressive state, again, because of politics and because it serves people, particularly within the 128 district. But the fact is we keep going backwards. And it is clear, I'm pretty sure, that in the state, there is an appetite for progressive tax system. And when the ballot question was bumped and we didn't have an option to vote on that, it was a sad day indeed, because I think that would have beat out marijuana and the municipal light plant basically on a vote if it came to it. So, but I agree with you, Councilor Jarrett. And the problem is that we spend all our time jerry rigging and cobbling a dysfunctional and unfair system and trying to find gimmicks to offset the realized harm that people experience and the inequity that it applies. And so, yeah, for the remaining time that I have, I'm with you, and I'll be with you cheering from the peanut gallery when going forward. So,
Counselor Labarge.
Yes, thank you, Counselor Dwight. I would feel that, this is my opinion, that we need to look at our representatives and our senators to help us move this along. I mean, we would not, as counselors, be able to do this ourselves. We would need our reps and our senators and to encourage them to help us move it on. And I think it's something well worth working on. It's not going to happen overnight, but it will be challenges, but I think it's well worth doing it.
Thank you. Counselor Nash.
Thank you, Council President. It's hard to, for us as counselors, knowing that people out there are having a rough time like right now. There's a lot of people struggling, and to, lock in on rates that can be a burden. But every year when the mayor does the budget presentation in January, the thing that always stands out for me is how state aid has been level funded for basically the last 20 years. That state aid used to cover nearly 30% of our needs, and now has, I believe it's dipped below 15%. And had that actually stayed apace the last 20 years, we wouldn't be needing to dip into property taxes the way we do. And and I agree with Councilor Dwight. It really is time for the state to step up and start, figuring out much more progressive ways to provide funds to cities and towns, so that we're not digging into our property values to pay for everything. So anyway, I'll be supporting this. And I also, when I've talked with business owners, they're like, what are you going to do for tax breaks for businesses? And one of them, my response is, well, we support you by having the same tax rate as everybody else, that we're all in this together and we're all sharing the burden. So so I'm going to support this. And I also appreciate Councilor Dwight's speech every year about the split. And I hope he comes back in years to come to provide that testimony. Because it just frames everything so well. So thank you.
That's an excellent point, that there is a public hearing every year. So when you are a member of the public, you should come back and do that.
I'll send you a tape loop. How's that?
That'll work.
Any other discussion on this order? Okay, seeing none, roll call please, Laura, on a positive recommendation.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that moves forward with a positive recommendation, and there are no other items on the finance agenda.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is made by Counselor Thorpe, seconded by Counselor Labarge to adjourn. Roll call please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, we have adjourned and we are back in the full council, where we will take up that same financial order, so 21.350, in order to establish a tax classification for FY 2022. This is on first reading. Motion is made by Counselor Labarge.
Second.
Seconded by Counselor Foster. Any discussion now in the council? Full council. Okay. Seeing none, roll call please, Laura, on a first reading.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
and Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in first reading. And we're on to financial orders on second reading, 21.342, in order to appropriate senior center gift fund money to financial aid fund.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Any discussion on second reading? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
and Counselor Maori.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading, and we're at 21.343, in order to surplus city land for affordable housing in a community resilience hub off Crafts Avenue.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's made by Counselor Labarge, seconded by Counselor Thorpe. Discussion on second reading. Seeing no hands, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
and Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Okay, that passes in second reading, and we are on to orders on first reading. This is 21.351, an order for district heating and microgrids. I'm going to read it. It's upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narcoitz, Planning and Sustainability and Energy and Sustainability Commission. Whereas the Climate Resilience and Regeneration Plan, an element of the Sustainable Northampton Comprehensive Plan, acknowledges that natural gas leaks and generation results in higher greenhouse gas emissions than is often disclosed, and creates a goal of replacing natural gas for building and water heating with renewable and potentially renewable energy sources. Whereas in endorsing that plan, the other city council orders and resolutions, City Council has gone on record numerous times to support efforts and innovations to reduce the city's carbon footprint while helping the city thrive even with climate change. And whereas Eversource, which provides natural gas to a majority of buildings in the city, is undertaking a pilot study of networked geothermal systems for heating and cooling potentially combined with other sources of waste heat, which could reduce or eliminate the need for natural gas. Whereas replacing fossil fuel sources with geothermal for building water and space heating and cooling can reduce building carbon emissions by about 60%. Whereas Northampton's participation in the geothermal pilot can significantly advance progress towards the city's climate goals and advance Eversource's offerings. Whereas the city is exploring options for extraction and distribution of ground source geothermal energy, which could potentially include Main Street, which will be open during the Picture Main Street construction project, and which already supports diverse energy use demands. Ordered that City Council enthusiastically supports participating in the Eversource geothermal pilot, including for Main Street, and the city clerk is requested to forward a certified copy of this order to the Eversource geothermal pilot and the state legislative delegation.
Move approval, please.
I'm gonna second this.
Did you say you're going to second that, Councilor Labarge?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Motion was made by Councilor Dwight, seconded by Councilor Labarge. I mean, the order does say that we have to be enthusiastic about that. So, discussion, Mayor Narcoitz.
So obviously the order I think is somewhat self-explanatory, but some of you may know that there has been discussion related to the Picture Main Street project about planning for future infrastructure as part of that project, and one of the ideas that's been put forward is planning for the potential for a heating district that would be non-fossil fuel. Smith College is actually working on a district heating project on its campus, and as it turns out, Eversource, who is our gas provider, is launching these pilot programs, and I think they have one right now in Eastern Massachusetts. I think they're slated to do 3 of them, and so it seemed like a perfect dovetailing of the interest in looking at this concept in Northampton with what Eversource is piloting. So as the resolution and the council president just said, this is Northampton's way of enthusiastically volunteering to be part of any such pilot, and that Eversource should, that we're a willing participant, and we've got this great Main Street downtown that might be a perfect pilot for it. We've had a lot of discussions about it. We've had a lot of, we've heard from a lot of experts who've come and testified before NESC, and I've met with them and certainly understand the concept, but ultimately this is having the actual utility company do this work and work on this pilot would be the ideal as they look to transition away themselves from fossil fuels and move to like this sort of geothermal network idea. So anyway, that's where this came from. Credit to Mr. Fiden, who couldn't be here tonight. He's away at a conference, and I believe it was enthusiastically endorsed by NESC. Also, Carolyn Mish is here tonight representing Planning and Sustainability, which is one of the sponsors as well.
Questions? Councilor Nash.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is pretty cool the way this is all coming together, just like you said, Mayor, that this idea was, flown by people with the Picture Main Street forums, and that, initially when I heard it, I was kind of like, wow, that's kind of pie in the sky, and but here we are, we're entertaining partnering with, of all people, Eversource, to see if this could be a pilot here. And good public process always amazes me, that the outcomes, that we can actually land on if we all work together and, listen and work with partners like, who knew, Eversource. So anyway, I think this is really cool, and I very much support it.
Excellent. Mayor Narkowitz, is there more that needs to be done to participate in this pilot other than sort of enthusiastically waving our, raising our hands and saying we want to do it?
Yeah.
I think this is sort of an opening. I think this is certainly an opening. I mean, in Eastern Mass, they've already identified a series of communities for one of the 3 pilots. And they're basically, they're actually contacting their own customers, either business or residential. And they've selected, it's quite a large list of towns in their service area. And so I think, I think they're planning 3 such pilots. So I think it's really our wanting to not only get on their radar screen, it might be helpful if similar orders or similar interest was expressed by other Western Mass communities. So that may also be a secondary part of this campaign, to let them know that there may be a critical mass of communities out here that are, that are Eversource customers. This is a grant. I think they're receiving a grant from the federal government for this, from the U.S. Department of Energy, for these pilots. And so, to the extent that they're actively seeking customers in Eastern Mass, you go to their website, they're looking for like 100 residential and commercial or industrial customers in the same neighborhood. A dense cluster of diverse customers provides the best pilot. So by trying to identify that there's potentially a really dense cluster of customers in and around downtown, that might be a way to see if they would take on us as a pilot. So I think this is sort of a more formalized, official kind of way, but obviously we could follow that up with the conversations that I hope would ensue when they receive this.
So should we be encouraging people, say, who live near downtown to also be enthusiastically telling Eversource they'd be interested?
They certainly could if they wanted. I think, it's not quite, it's a little different than what they're doing in Eastern Mass, where they've basically already decided we're going to do a pilot here, and then they're asking customers to identify themselves because they don't have a pilot planned here. I think we're just trying to, at this point, get them to consider a pilot. So that's sort of what this first step was about.
Okay, Councilor Dwight.
It's worth noting that, first of all, one of our pitches is that we'll have an open trench for them to actually develop from there. We're going to provide them with a shovel-ready opportunity to use us as a demonstration. The other fact is that David Pomerantz was talking about microgrids on power grids and heating grids 10 years ago with me, and doing research on this. This is not something, we're not new to this conversation, and this is a really exciting opportunity that if we're favored with their choice of pilot communities, I think that we can serve them while they serve us in a rather well, if they want, in a gaudy fashion. That if they want to use us to promote these systems and to see how they work, I think the fact that our willingness to be part of that, and as I said, start and provide them with the digging, give them an open trench or which they can work from with a community that's not only thinks it's a cool idea, but is invested in this concept and committed to this concept for decades. So, yeah, I would just also, I would share with them that we were the first and only 5-star rated community, Energy Star rated community in the country. And that was not by accident. And it was because of our aggressive pursuit of trying to reduce our carbon footprint and prepare for climate changes and its impacts. And this would go a long way to that, because the beauty of for microcells or anything of that sort, or microgrids, is they're more robust. They're not reliant on a larger system. Like the whole Northeast goes down in power and the whole Northeast loses heat. In this case, it is more, if it's localized, it's more responsive and it's more robust, and it provides more sure, clean energy. So yeah, put us down for come and get us.
Okay. Councillor Jarrett, then Councillor Labarge.
Yeah, I think this is a very exciting development. As a member of the Energy and Sustainability Commission, we've been talking about this and we've had a presentation on it. I think it's a great step to decarbonize the denser urban areas where the individual electric heat pumps are not always practical, sometimes because you can only have so many air source heat pumps in the same space. Otherwise, and you kind of run out of air to cool. And so I think, yeah, I'm definitely supporting it. And I like that we could do a resolution about this, but I like that this is an order and that the executive branch is joining us in enthusiastically supporting it. And also, just to put a little note, I wonder in the future, we may be able to operate something like this as a municipal utility.
But right now, we're very enthusiastically talking to Eversource. Councilor Labarge.
Yes, I'm just very pleased that Eversource is moving forward. I wonder if, because there is such a huge outcry about clean energy, I think we're going to find other companies coming forth also. I think it's going to be very competitive. So I think this is great for the city of Northampton, and also to Councilor Dwight is correct. About 10 years ago, this was brought up about clean energy many, many years ago here. So we're moving forward. I agree with Eversource coming in with this pilot program. It's not costing us anything. So let them take the shovel and start digging, as long as they include, I think Main Street would be critical for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this order? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura, on a first reading.
Councillor Thorpe,
Yes.
Councillor Dwight,
Yes.
Councillor Foster,
Yes.
Councillor Jarrett,
Yes.
Councillor Labarge,
Yes.
Councillor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes. Okay, that moves, that's approved in first reading, and we're on to ordinances not yet referred. 21.349, an ordinance relative to parking on Meadow Street. This is coming from Transportation and Parking. Is there a motion to refer?
Move referral to legislative matters.
Motion was made by Counselor Foster, I think seconded by Counselor Maori, yes? Any discussion on that referral? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
and Counselor Thorpe.
Yes.
Okay, that has been referred, and we're at ordinances on second reading. 21.345, an ordinance to delete ward and precinct boundaries from code book and maintain by council order.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Labarge, seconded by Councilor Thorpe. Any discussion? We should note, Laura, we have a meeting on Monday. I have not seen your email that I saw come through. I haven't read it. So just so that the public knows, can you tell us what time that meeting is? And so we're
It's
having a special meeting on Monday.
Monday, November 8th at 7 p.m. is that meeting.
Okay, and that is just to vote on changing the language, correct? So, and not changing the
Correct.
language, but combining the language of the precincts into wards, which has been a request by the state.
Correct. The map is not changing. It's just the language itself describing the map.
Okay, so the council will have a special meeting on that this coming Monday at 7 p.m. Any discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none, roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Jarrett,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and that's it.
Okay.
Uh,
Councilor
Yeah,
Dwight?
just a process note that of course, our special meeting comes on the heels of a legislative matters meeting. Given what's being referred, I don't imagine the agenda is going to clog up and run over. Unless something I really haven't seen.
There's a hearing,
could-
isn't there, Laura?
There's 2 zoning ordinances, and then there's 4 other parking ordinances besides the one referred tonight. But hopefully it'll be within the 2-hour
Hopefully
timeframe.
it'll, yeah, with any luck, but that's just a heads up to folks that there may be that conflict.
Yes. Okay. Anything, well, there's nothing else on this agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion's made by Councilor Nash, seconded by Councilor Thorpe to adjourn. Roll call, please, Laura.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Maori,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Thorpe,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Foster,
Yes.
and Counselor Jarrett.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned. Let's have our next meeting, or should we do okay, so it's the beginning of November. Should we do our next meeting or the first meeting in December and take the photo?
Our
Anyone?
next meeting is the special meeting, so
I mean, our next regular
Yeah.
meeting, our third Thursday meeting.
the
December?
first December meeting will be the penultimate meeting.
Does that
It's,
feel like a good
before the
picture
last day
time?
of, yeah, before the last day of class. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, feels like a photogenic moment. Okay, let's do that. Councilor Labarge, what's up?
Yes, I didn't catch the date on that, please. For the pictures.
Oh, so the first meeting in December, and we didn't say it. Does anyone have that date in front of them?
The second?
December 2nd?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so December 2nd. So let's try and come on a few minutes early, before 7, and we'll snap our little Brady Bunch screenshot, okay?
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Right, there's nine exactly, unless,
I
well,
know.
no, we want to include Laura.
And then
Laura
Laura,
gets
yeah.
included,
Yeah.
right? So there will be 10. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks,
Good
everyone.
night.
Have a good
Yeah.
night.
Good night.
Right.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you, Council President.
Thank
Thank you.
you, Council Vice President. Good night.